I happen to believe that passion is overrated, curiosity is underrated. So I think we push each other to say, what's your passion? What are you passionate about? And do you know what your passion is? Well, I think a lot of us don't know what our passion is, but we do have, well, I wonder about that thing. We have curiosity often. And the ability to chase those little rabbits, I wonder what that's about. If you're disciplined about doing that, you start to understand what your passion are. You start to see how these curiosities might fit together into a passion.
So, hi everyone, I'm really excited today to interview Mr. Dan Hart, FAIA.
I think I see life through the lens of being an architect. I understand this world as an architect, which is a pretty thin slice of what it means to exist in the world. But because I have drilled deep in my interest in architecture, I think I understand the broader world better. So it's a particular focus that gives me a broad understanding. And I think it's the tension between specialist and generalist that we have to hold. In a practical way that plays out right now, let's say you're a student and you're thinking about your first job. What's going to happen? What do I need to do? Well, who's hiring right now? A lot of firms have, as you mentioned earlier, have put jobs on hold, and they've frozen hiring. They may even be laying people off, and it looks pretty grim right now. Well, we're having a public health crisis. So the firms that do healthcare are really busy. A lot of them are really busy right now. They're trying to help hospitals accommodate the need. Well, maybe your interest is not healthcare. Maybe you never had an interest to be a healthcare architect, but that happens to be where some work is right now. So maybe you pursue, this is a good example of, I don't know how this is going to feed into where I want to get in life, but I think there might be something here. Well, that might be the job that presents to you, and you get a position to help hospital facilities deal with surge capacity for future pandemics, just as an example. Well, that's not what you set out to do with your life, but you take that job and you do that job for a year or two, and you start to learn how to speak the language of your client. That's a universal skill. You start to connect your work to the bigger societal challenges. That's a universal skill. You start to understand how great design can improve health and wellness. That's not just a healthcare architecture thing. That applies broadly to anything you want to do in architecture. So the particulars of that situation inform the broader window of understanding that you have. And so I think the opportunities for students right now, unfortunately, are more limited than they have been. We came into this crisis with a really robust economy, and that's not the same. But it's showing signs that we're coming out of it, and so I think there's hope, and I think there's opportunity for you. And it's ironic. The title says "Getting Things Done," but really, what it's about is feeling comfortable about the things you're not doing in any moment. So it's that peace of mind that you get from having a trusted system that allows you to do your best work. So that's been really highly influential book to me. The approach, especially in the times where we live in right now, where we can't travel, appreciate what's around you in a new way. Pretend like you're a tourist to where you live, and go to it with the same excitement and wonder you would if you were going to some new place you've never been. And you can experience it that way. You can really appreciate what's there in ways that you wouldn't think would be possible. And then I think on top of, you've got the COVID crisis, you've got this bigger looming crisis of climate, and then you've got these lesser crises that we're going to start to see into the fall of tornadoes and hurricanes, these weather events that are happening. So some communities are going to feel the effects of 3 different crises at the same time. And I think in terms of architecture, we're going to feel all of that as well. And we're going to have to respond to how do we mitigate and adapt design to be able to withstand these kind of disasters? How do we shape our buildings so that we're healthier and maybe more protected from these crises? Things like infection control, physical separation. Remote work is going to be have a huge impact on our profession. It's incredible to me. My firm is 380 people. We didn't expect to have to move everybody home, but we did in less than a week. And I can't believe, I was just telling one of my partners this morning, if we had decided 6 months ago we wanted to move everybody to their home to work, we would have worked for 6 months with 3 different task forces to figure all that out. Well, it happened and we moved in less than a week, and it seems like it's working just fine. I mean, I'm amazed at how flexible we can be, but we didn't know we could be that flexible. But I think what we're learning now about how to communicate like we're doing now, how to interact and be collaborative, how to do design from afar, I think that's all going to have really meaningful impacts on how we go forward in this profession. We're not able to do as much project development, working to get new projects. That's much harder, and it's complicated by the fact that clients are pulling back and they're uncertain about what's coming, so they don't want to be thinking about new projects at this time. So we're doing just fine as a firm right now, but the question is, what's it going to be like next year when we haven't gotten the projects now that are going to be the projects we're doing next year? So that's a big question still. We lost, as you probably know, a whole cohort of architects that left the profession at that time. There just wasn't jobs, and so we're still suffering from the effects of that 11 years later. You can't find those 10 years plus or minus professionals experience. But I think in addition to the structural reasons why we may not have suffered as much, I think we've always been highly attuned to the metrics of our business as a firm, hyper aware of our financials. We had strong cash on hand. We had a strong backlog of work. Looking at the forecast of future work, looking at staffing levels, all of that stuff we do very well. So that helped us ride out that storm. Now, what's interesting, that downturn didn't affect us directly at the time, but a year later, we had a really hard time. So we ended up having to lay some people off a year after the recession. The overriding characteristic that successful people share is grit, determination, perseverance, the ability to stay with it. I think a place to start with that in terms of creating and developing a network is to think about what your unique perspective is, what your interests are, and then find your people. Find the people that have those same interests, or that have interests that would benefit from your interests and perspectives. What would I do? Practical advice. If I was a student right now, one thing I would do is join AIA. You can join, even as a student, you can join AIA, and as soon as you graduate, it starts your membership, and it's 18 months of free membership. So if you're a May grad, you can be a member up and through December of 2021 for free. So what does that do? Well, it gives you a magazine where you can keep abreast of what's going on in the profession. It gives you a connection to a local chapter that's got all kinds of programming and other members, firm owners and people in firms that is going to build your network. You're going to get advocacy updates. You're going to see what's going on with legislation around our profession, what's next for our profession, how this is all affecting our profession. You're going to get resources to prep for the test, the ARE.